The 11:58 p.m. commuter from Chicago Union Station wasn't on any public schedule. That was the first thing that caught Nina's eye when she scrolled through the CTA tracker on her cracked phone. She had been stranded on the near west side for 2 hours after her rideshare cancelled. The city smelled of wet pavement and diesel, and the November wind cut through her thrift store coat like knives. Her battery icon blinked red. The station's giant clock read 11:47. An unscheduled northbound run sounded better than freezing until dawn. Besides, she told herself, plenty of conductors forget to log last-minute maintenance trips. Inside the cavernous terminal, fluorescent lights flickered like tired stars. The few late-night travelers, drunks, night shift nurses, a couple of teens with skateboards kept their heads down. Track 13, where the mysterious train was listed, stretched empty except for a single gleaming silver engine, lights already on, cars humming as if impatient. The doors hissed open the moment Nina stepped onto the platform. No conductor. No announcements. Just the smell of ozone and a faint rhythmic hum that almost matched her heartbeat. She chose a middle car, slid into a window seat, and shivered. The interior was spotless, no graffiti, no gum, not even the usual crumbs of 1,000 commuters. Upholstery a rich midnight blue. Brass fixtures polished to a glow. The air carried a subtle scent of burnt cedar. The doors closed behind her with a soft pneumatic sigh. The train began to move. Nina startled. Wait, hey! She half rose, expecting an operator or conductor to appear. None did. Through the glass she watched Chicago blur and vanish, the skyline swallowed by night faster than any express she'd ever ridden. The overhead display flickered to life. Next stop, north. No city name. No mileage. Minutes stretched. The usual clatter of tracks was muted, more like a steady low-frequency vibration in her bones. When she checked her phone, there was no signal, not even a searching icon, just a dead grey screen, though the battery still held a sliver of red. A man in a dark wool coat appeared 3 rows ahead, where she swore there had been no one. He sat perfectly upright, a leather satchel on his knees. His skin had the pale, almost luminous cast of someone who'd lived too long under fluorescent lights. Excuse me, Nina called, forcing brightness into her voice. Do you know where this train's headed? The man turned slowly. His eyes were the color of old coins. To the end, he said. She waited for a smile, a laugh. None came. The car door behind her slid open. A woman in a red scarf entered, followed by a wiry teen with headphones around his neck. Each chose a seat without a glance her way. More passengers trickled in from nowhere, an elderly couple, a middle-aged man with a briefcase, a child clutching a stuffed fox. All silent. All dry despite the rain outside. None acknowledged the others. Nina's throat tightened. She considered moving to the next car, but the man in the wool coat spoke again. Tickets, please. He hadn't moved from his seat. His voice was flat, but the words vibrated like a tuning fork. The other passengers raised their hands in eerie unison, each holding a slip of dark paper that shimmered as if wet. Nina's palms were empty. I didn't buy a ticket, she said. That's all right, the man replied. It will be collected at your stop. The train accelerated. Wind screamed past the windows, but the stars outside remained perfectly still, fixed like paint on black glass. She tried the intercom near the door. Static. Tried the emergency brake. Locked. Her reflection in the window wavered. For an instant it wasn't her face but her sister Maya's, the sister who'd vanished 10 years ago, last seen boarding a northbound metro after a late shift. Nina jerked back, heart hammering. When she looked again, only her own wide eyes stared back. A soft chime echoed. The overhead screen pulsed. Next stop, Haven. The man in the coat stood, brushing invisible dust from his lapel. Your first transfer, he said. Through the windows, a station materialized out of darkness, wrought iron arches, glowing lamps, and a crowd waiting in perfect stillness. Their faces were pale and expectant, their eyes blank. As the train slowed, every passenger except Nina rose in unison and filed to the doors. The man in the coat paused beside her. Not you, he murmured. Not yet. The doors opened. Cold mist rolled in, carrying a faint scent of lilacs and formaldehyde. The passengers stepped off soundlessly. None looked back. When the last figure disappeared into the fog, the doors sealed and the train surged forward again. Nina pressed her forehead to the glass. The station vanished instantly, as though erased. Her pulse raced. I'm dreaming. I fell asleep in Union Station, she told herself. But the sting of the cold metal seat, the ache in her legs, the copper taste of fear in her mouth all said otherwise. The man in the coat returned to his seat and regarded her with an almost kindly expression. You've been searching a long time, he said. For your sister. Nina's stomach dropped. How do you? He lifted a finger. We'll reach the last stop soon. You can decide there. Decide what? Whether you stay. The train plunged into a tunnel so dark it felt like swimming through ink. Overhead lights flickered, casting the cabin in strobe flashes. In each blink, Nina glimpsed things that weren't there, a childhood bedroom, the alley where she'd lost her first bike, the hospital room where her father died. The images came faster, sharper, until she felt pulled apart. Then, silence. The display glowed once more. Final stop, north. The man in the coat rose. This is where you choose. The doors slid open onto a platform of endless snow under a green aurora. Shapes moved in the distance, humanoid, familiar. Among them stood Maya, unchanged from the night she vanished. She lifted a hand, smiling. Snowflakes drifted in lazy spirals, each one glowing faintly green beneath the wavering aurora. The platform stretched farther than Nina's eyes could follow, no rails, no walls, just a silver stripe of metal vanishing into endless white. Maya. Nina's voice cracked. Her sister's smile widened, the same lopsided grin from childhood photographs. She wore the blue parka she'd been reported missing in 10 years ago, its zipper still broken at the collar. Behind her, a handful of figures hovered in the shimmering snow. Nina recognized faces she'd only ever seen framed in funeral photos: her grandmother, an old neighbor, a boy from high school who died in a car crash. They all beckoned silently. The man in the wool coat stepped beside Nina. His breath didn't cloud the frigid air. You can stay, he said softly. The journey ends for those who choose it. Nina's pulse hammered. Stay where? What is this place? He tilted his head toward the platform. North. Where the searching stops. Maya's voice carried across the snow though her lips barely moved. Come with me. You don't have to be alone anymore. The train hummed behind them, doors yawning like an open mouth. Its interior glowed warmer than before, promising light, movement, escape. Nina hugged herself against the cold. I can't. I have a life. Work. Friends. The man's coin-colored eyes softened. Life is only the stations you pass through. You can always step off. A sudden gust sliced across the platform, whipping snow into knives. Nina staggered. The figures wavered like mirages, yet Maya remained sharp, heartbreakingly solid. Images flooded Nina's mind: empty holidays, the ache of unanswered questions, the constant hum of loneliness she never admitted to anyone. Here was the end of that ache. Here was the answer. But then she remembered her dog-eared notebook waiting back in her apartment, the sketches for the art show she'd finally been accepted to, the text her best friend had sent only hours earlier, "You okay? Call me when you're safe." There was still warmth left in the world. Unfinished laughter. Unlived days. Nina stepped back toward the train. Maya's smile faltered. Snow swirled harder, dissolving the green light into static. Please, her sister whispered, voice breaking. Don't leave me again. Tears burned Nina's cheeks. I never left you, she said. I've been carrying you every day. But I have to keep moving. The man in the coat inclined his head, neither approval nor reproach in his gaze. Then your ticket is collected. Nina stumbled into the car just as the doors sealed. The platform and Maya faded to white, then to nothing. The train surged forward with a shudder that rattled her bones. Darkness swallowed the windows. For a long time there was only the muted rhythm of the wheels clack, clack like a giant heartbeat. When light returned, it was the familiar sodium glow of Chicago's South Side rail yard. The train slowed, brakes screeching. A conductor in a navy cap, an ordinary human one, stepped into her car. End of the line, miss, he said, punching a clipboard. You're the last passenger. Nina blinked. What station is this? Union. Where else? He smiled faintly. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. The doors opened onto the same platform where she'd boarded, though dawn now tinted the sky pale pink. The world smelled of diesel and whetstone, ordinary, grounding. When she turned back to thank the conductor, the car behind her was empty. No passengers. No man in a wool coat. Outside, Chicago was waking. Delivery trucks rumbled past, pigeons scattered, and a street musician tuned his guitar. Nina wrapped her coat tighter and headed for the exit. She had to call her best friend, maybe tell someone, maybe not. Halfway up the stairs, her phone buzzed to life. Full signal. Battery inexplicably at 70%. A single new message blinked on the lock screen. North thanks you for riding. Next departure, when you're ready. Below it, a photo she hadn't taken, Maya on the snowbound platform, waving. Nina stood there until commuters jostled around her, the morning rush already in motion. Finally she pocketed the phone, exhaled a cloud of warm breath, and climbed into the waking city. She wasn't sure if she'd dreamed it, or if she'd merely chosen for now to keep moving. But every time the wind carried a low, distant hum, she felt the rails beneath her feet, waiting.